I was so moved by each and every one of the films. So I want to first just go down the line so the filmmakers can say which film they are connected to.
I'm Yvonne Michelle Shirley, director, producer of Miasia, The Nature of Experience.
I'm Miasia Clark.
I'm Gabriela Watson Aurazo, director and producer of Baobab Flowers.
I'm Michael Primo, director and producer of Water Warriors.
So the line actually in your film that stuck out to me was when the sister said you have to normalize resistance. I thought that was such a powerful quote to take from this, and it made me think about just the various things that we saw in all this. The theme, the running theme, I felt like in these movies, was about resistance and political education, really, right? Because if films like this provide an education for audiences who wouldn't normally have access to these kind of stories that are happening around the world. So I want some of the filmmakers to talk a little bit about this idea of push out. Like, we talk about push out, I do education and advocacy work, we talk about push out in terms of education, but one of the things that was really clear is that it is larger than that, right? People are being pushed out in various ways all over the world because of white supremacy and capitalism, which is larger than just education. So can y'all talk a little bit about that idea of how people are being pushed out of communities and homes and anyone?
So I first learned about school pushed out when I first began to experience it, and when I started working at Girls for Gender Equity. So I was pushed out of school by the zero tolerance policy as well as harsh discipline. I had certain clothes I could and I could not wear. I was supposed to speak a certain way, act a certain way, and if I didn't do those things or carry myself in a certain manner, I was suspended, expelled, told I couldn't come back to school, or I had to have like intervention circles. And push out is a real thing. And I feel like when we talk about push out, most people think about schools or they think about the workplace. But I feel like it happens in my everyday aspect of life. I feel like I feel pushed out when I'm in spaces with people who don't expect me to be there. I feel like I'm pushed out when I open my mouth and people are amazed at how I can articulate my words and how I express myself. I feel like I'm just pushed out just for being a black girl and being in my own skin. That's it.
Woo!
Well, I came to learn more and more about the issue through working on this film, producing this film. And as you saw, so this film was about Miasia, but it was centered around an event that happened last spring in New York City called the Black Girl Movement National Conference. And so that was a 3-day event that focused on black girls, that focused on centering black girls and addressing their disadvantages, but also celebrating and publicly acknowledging their cultural contributions. And as you saw, this was also centered around a group called Girls for Gender Equity that was founded and is directed by Joanne Smith, who's here today.
Joanne, shout out to Joanne.
So I just really want to acknowledge the work that people like Joanne do in creating platforms where you have girls like Miasia that can come together. And really, I mean, what was just so impressive was seeing these young girls do this work that adult-led institutions have such a problem doing, and they're so focused and effective on creating ways to combat oppressive institutions and undoing systemic oppression, and you know, in ways that, like, as adults we still struggle with. So I think like Girls for Gender Equity just is a wonderful platform that should be a model for kind of the work that we can do.
adapted to me as an international person here. And when I think of push out in my experience, was not finding in the educational institutions that I attended representation, diversity, and understanding, and solidarity. So I felt so many times that I just had to not go to school, didn't feel motivated to go to school. And so in a sense, I felt that they were pushing me out. And when I talk, in the process of talking to so many of the people involved in the film, they will relate to the experience. They say, oh, I hated school. I didn't feel that the books represented me as a Black person. The professors the teachers didn't pay much attention if I was the darker school in a room. So for me, I will adapt in that sense. That's why I really wanted to talk about the Black educators. Like, I wish I had a teacher like Miasia. I wish I had a teacher like Priscilla, that will talk to me and listen to me and just care about who I was in the classroom.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the theme of push out is applicable in terms of the Philadelphia School District, just in the way that teachers are treated. And I spent almost 14 years in the Philadelphia School District, and in that time, I started off at Autumn Reed, I taught at Strawberry Mansion, West Philly High, Parkway, Overbrook, Edison, and each time it's like starting all over. And so just between the turmoil downtown, the turmoil in the administration, a lot of really good teachers, really dedicated teachers end up feeling like I need to do something else. And so I think that it's applicable in that way in terms of teachers,
I first want to acknowledge the producer for Water Warriors is here, my business partner, Rachel Falcone. I think what was really interesting about this collection of shorts was this notion of colonialism and genocide. And genocide manifests itself in many different ways. There's cultural genocide, there's mass murder genocide, and on the other end of the spectrum, there's also the complete erasure of culture, which is a form of colonialism and genocide. In relationship to indigenous communities have been pushed out of history, pushed out of our conversation. I can't think of one single TV show or movie that I've seen in the last 15 years that has indigenous people in it who aren't playing some Indians who are getting killed by Leonardo DiCaprio. Right? And so it relates to this idea of being pushed out, completely erased from history. And I think that my commitment to revolutionary struggle would be incomplete if my actions and analysis didn't also include the recognition of solidarity with indigenous peoples.
Yes.
I think I realize now why I was asked to moderate this panel. So, full disclosure, I work for Girls for Gender Equity in New York. Shout out to Joanne Smith in the audience. And lived in Philadelphia for many years and was an education advocate for the schools here. So a lot of these films were close to my heart. I mean, my whole life was dedicated to resistance, right? And I'm also sit right at the intersection of art and activism. And when I look at films like this, as I was watching films, I thought about how political education through film is definitely a form of resistance. I wonder if y'all could talk a little bit about your larger goals with these films, right? It's clearly to educate folks, but is there movement work connected to it? Is there a goal that you have to beyond just educating the audience about the issues?
For Water Warriors, so Water Warriors is a short film that you saw, and it's also an exhibit. It's an installation that's been touring museums and galleries and community spaces. We could have made a much longer piece with Water Warriors, but we chose explicitly to make something that was short and quick moving, so that it could be used in workshops and meetings and educational spaces. And our goal with this film, as a maker, as a storyteller, I'm committed to the liberation of our radical imagination and our ability to dream new possibilities. And so Water Warriors is part of that commitment to show people that it's possible, to show people the importance of the leadership of indigenous women and the potential of multiracial coalitions to understand how our oppressions intersect, to be able to, in that we can fight and win. Like, that's what I want to do, is I want to make stories about us winning, and winning in, with grace and style and beauty. So that's the goal.
All right.
So film as a tool for revolution. Is that? Got it right? Excuse everyone, sometimes a little tricky to understand 100%. First, I want to give a shout out to executive producer Doris Derby, who came from Atlanta, Georgia. And her husband, Mr. Banks. Yes, so Dr. Doris, she is a veteran of the civil rights movement. She's a photographer, documentary photographer, and a former teacher at Georgia State University. And it was a blessing to have her involved in the crew and her support in the crew. So
y'all gotta give her, this is a legend.
And give a shout out to this big crew that I had involved during these years. Melissa Skolnick, a creative producer. We have April Brown, the production team, Lamont, Gibson, and Cleonice Fonseca, the dancer. So I think everyone that I saw. Cleonice, are you here? I saw her come. I think she was. Okay.
I just want to say that. Okay. You want to? Go ahead. I just want some of my students that I taught like almost 10 years ago. They're grown now. Came to surprise me.
All right. So the answer. I was raised in a very political family, and they talk politics, talk about social issues. And growing up, it was so hard to see myself represented in the screens. So I believe that, I think that when you put Black people on the screens, is already a revolutionary act. And because this is a decision, you know, you could choose as a director. You can choose whatever topic you want, but you want to talk about something that resonates with you, I believe. I'm sure a lot of people feel that way. And as you know, I decided to be a filmmaker when I saw a film, when I saw Malcolm X. You know? So, and that motivated me to find out the history of my people. Even being an Afro-Brazilian, I had to watch an American film to look for Afro-Brazilian history. So that's amazing. You know, the power that the film has is amazing. You know, so this is why it's so important for us to keep telling our stories, for us to support, you know, to have this intergenerational support. This is fantastic, and I think that we should always, you know, this is why when I look at younger people and they want to make film, I'm like, okay, how can I help you? I feel that, you know, you need to keep the process going. And you know, and that's how I do revolution every day, because we cannot be completely confrontational with reality. Although sometimes we feel, because it's, you know, being a person of color it's very complicated in this war. But we need to choose how to fight, and that's our choice.
I quickly do also want to acknowledge that my producer Ayanna Salisbury, who's here, and my editor he's also here, and our executive producer Salamisha Tillett is also here. And Salamisha really is the person that made this film possible. She was on the organizing committee for the Black Girl Movement Conference, and you know, they decided that they wanted a film and kind of folded it into the portfolio of what the conference outcomes were going to be. So she made it all possible. So you know, for our film, because it was made in conjunction with the conference, we definitely hope that it can help all of the organizations that were involved just help them with their work, with their advocacy. And but also, I think me coming to it, I made narrative films as well, and I saw it as an opportunity to make a kind of particular coming of age story that I'm interested in, and it is this coming of age from a black girl's point of view that has to do with developing a consciousness about these external things that have nothing to do with us as individuals, but we all kind of have to find a way to reconcile them, to learn about them, and then the decision with how we handle them is just very personal. Miasia is young, she was engaged in activism, so to me it was just astounding to know all of the layers that led her into her decision at a young age to be engaged in that way. And I think that she can really inspire young people to take that on as an extracurricular that's as common as anything else that they do, any sport, any music, any dance, that this type of civic engagement is just as much a part of traditions in our community as anything else. So.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, baby. Go ahead.
Like before we did, I wanna give a big shout out to GGE. All the girls in GGE, they couldn't be here today, but they all helped me in a big and major way. I would like to give a shout out to my mom. She's in the back with my siblings. Yvonne, Ayana, and everyone else. And then I would also like to give a shout out to Hala, how all of our lives link together. Because, I started this film working with Girls for Gender Equity, and honestly, I didn't really have much of a goal. I just wanted it to be heard. I wanted my voice to be heard, and I wanted other people to understand and know that they're not the only ones going through this situation alone. And when I started working with Hala, I got the opportunity to work with a lot of other people and expand my horizons and build and meet a lot of people that were affected by being incarcerated, or they have parents that's incarcerated. So I feel like my goal right now is to continue to share my story, but also to take knowledge from other people that watch my story. Because I feel like it only helps me grow and become a better woman and a better person.
Right.
So, we have very limited time. I have one question from the audience. And I can't see, y'all don't know that about me. Okay, stand up, whoever you want to go. Is that Greg? Oh, I should have picked you.
No, for real. Because I talk a lot. Anybody else want to ask the question? It's fine. Okay, see, there's a reason why I'm in the room. Who you got?
You got 2 minutes.
Oh, for real?
Go.
All right, it's not going to be a 2-minute question. No, just what are some ways you're looking at diversifying the message? We've seen the importance of media and creating a narrative and shifting what our imaginations can do and how we see the world, because it shifts expectations for the people. So what are some ways you're looking at extending past media to actually impact the people with their story?
It's a good question, Greg. Thank you.
God bless me. Thank you.
Yes, Ron, you keep going wild, Greg.
For Water Warriors, we've developed a strategy. We've developed a resource guide and a facilitation guide. Specifically because the people in the story didn't have the support of NGOs or CBOs. They were truly folks doing the good work. We've designed some resources that we're disseminating in collaboration with some large organizations like 350.org, et cetera, to help folks plan and strategize. And we've worked with a bunch of Native organizers or educators from around the country who we have curriculum so that this story can lead to discussions around people analyzing the sort of tactical situation in which they're faced, to break down that tactic, to develop broader strategies for what they can do, and also specifically because direct action and civil disobedience is such a large part of the story, we've developed these facilitated conversation strategies for communities to take this to communities that have never considered the role of direct action or civil disobedience in their work, to imagine how it could help their own local work, and not just necessarily around water, but like just recognizing it in its use in broader strategy.
Well, I think that both Priscilla and I talked about independent African-centered schools, talked about homeschooling. So I think going forward, we still haven't met. We still have to figure out how Priscilla and I can meet, you know, not on Skype, but in person. But I think that linking these collectives would be what we want to do going forward, being able to share resources, curriculum, and things like that.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Like Michael was saying, right now it's the moment that we want to figure out how to use the film with the communities together and do something in these communities.
Yeah, we're at the beginning too. I think that I look forward to working with all the organizations, like I said, that were involved in the conference, GGE definitely, in creating just outreach events, maybe around the film screenings. And I mean, and one reason why we wanted to make the film modeled on a certain narrative is so that it would be palatable for maybe non-traditional audiences for this type of work. So I really want to look for just all types, ranges of venues to show this story to, and in that way have new people kind of gain an awareness about these issues.
Like Yvonne said. But also, I feel like showing it to my friends, because a lot of my friends aren't involved in the work that I do, so they're absent-minded to a lot of the things that affects them. And I feel like showing them many of the films that I've seen this week, it'll help inspire them. Like, it'll start something, and then they'll pass it on to someone else, and it'll just keep going.
Yes.
So I think that's a great note for us to end on. I hope that people watch these films and are more than just inspired in your seats. I hope you understand this whole film festival has been themed on resistance, and we can find different ways to resist in our everyday lives in myriad ways. You have examples in these films, you have examples in other films we saw this week, but we are in a time in our lives when we can't just sit and watch films. We have to be motivated, activated by them, and get up and out in our community.